All right, so welcome to Zoom room. Welcome back, everyone. So we're going to just pick up where we left off this afternoon. There's just the summary of today's lesson 159 to look at, which will give you all a kind of summary of it. And we can do a meditation on that, and then there's some text reading as well. Okay, so let me just share my screen with you. Okay, so we've got some 159 screen share. Okay, so there's the personalized executive summary. I think let's just read through that, let's make any corrections, and then do a meditation on it if you like. Okay, so let's ask John. You did a lot of reading earlier, so let's ask someone else. Christine, would you like to kick it off with paragraph 1?
I can only give what I've received, and true possession lies in the act of giving. By giving healing, release, and love, I find healing and release. Recognizing my connection with others and my oneness with pure formless awareness. The vision of my true self reflects eternal love and innocence, leading to the correction of perception and acting as a bridge between two worlds.
Okay, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like that, acting as a bridge between two worlds, because one can't totally deny the unreal world because we are living in it. But the real world is equally elusive, but at times it's very real. So to actually be able to bridge and make them come alive or walk the talk sort of stuff is quite something. And it's also about giving and receiving. Until you give away what you really value, you don't realize the value of your possession. And by giving healing, release, and love, healing and release is the connection I make with others in my oneness with pure formless awareness.
All right, sorry, I keep dropping out. It's not good, but let's go back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, you were saying a minute ago.
So in giving, I find the healing and release is actually me recognizing my connection with others and my oneness with pure formless awareness. And also, I love this business of I am love and I am innocent. Those are the most powerful tools, I think. Because you can look at a child and see they are innocent, but an adult, don't know so much. But when I actually work on that, I do feel innocent. And I think we all have that right to believe that we are innocent. And there's a clean slate from which to work.
Yeah, it's innocence and love go hand in hand. If I'm not innocent, then I'm not pure formless awareness of perfect love.
Yeah.
So that's why he's emphasizing over and over, you must perceive others and yourself as completely innocent. Otherwise, You're believing in the opposite of love. It's as simple as that. You're believing in sin and guilt and all of their sorry consequences. And so this vision, or the true perception, correction of my perception, which is true perception, vision, my true self, reflects eternal love and innocence. That I see only that, I perceive only that. Which is a profound transformation in one's perception. If you can perceive only innocence and love in a world like this, where there's so much that seemingly goes wrong and people behave in these crazy ways, that's a profound shift in your mindset in your life, isn't it?
And it's a choice.
Yeah.
Choice too, when you wake up in the morning, am I going to live in fear and guilt and negativity, or am I going to choose to be happy? And it's the same with love and innocence. At looking at another, you can allow that critical, judgmental voice to make you feel better when you look at the other. But the choice is also to just shower them with love and see them as innocent, which can be done. Look at their soul and their amazing spirit and the joy that they bestow on others. It's just a matter of making a choice of how to look and where to concentrate your thoughts.
Yeah. And that makes all the difference. He's saying that change in perception is where the rubber meets the road of this thought system and of awakening. Change your mind about someone else. Well, you've changed your mind about yourself. You can't change your mind about them unless you change it about yourself. So if they are innocent, then so must you be. And if they are guilty, then so must you be. It's as simple as that.
Yes.
So that's why the focus in the course is so much on relationships. They're saying, well, as you perceive others, so you perceive yourself. So one of the best ways of transforming your self concept is through your perception of others. You change your mind about them, you change your mind about yourself. And so it becomes a major way of awakening. He says, the other paths, sort of spending many hours in meditation on your own, well, that could work. But he said the means are tedious. This is tedious and time consuming and not really necessary, because you have your companions, you have your special relationships, and you have interactions with people all day long. And each one of those offers you the opportunity to awaken. So just see them for what they are, and you're on the fast track. So this is really a path of awakening through change of mind, change of perception, particularly with regards to relationships. Your special relationships and all relationships should be brought to this teaching, and then you perceive the people differently, and so you learn that you are different. And as you give, you receive, and these are the simple lessons he's been teaching us. Today's lesson, I give the miracles I've received. So I give the corrections I have received. As I receive them for myself, I extend them to others. I correct my own mind, I realize I'm love and innocence, and then I extend that, I give it to others. And I say, I extend that to them. And I must realize that it must be me as well. I can't keep extending what I don't have. As he says here, I can only give what I've received. True possession lies in the act of giving. That's a complete, radical undoing of the ego's thought system, isn't it?
Yeah.
The ego says, whatever I've given, I've lost. But this says, if I've given it, then I have it much more. In the act of giving, I confirm that I have it. So then I should give and give and give, because I'm confirming that I have and I have and I have. But it obviously applies in the metaphysical domain. You know, in the physical domain, the ego's laws rule, seemingly. Although what often happens, you know, physically, if you give something away and it's done in the right spirit, it'll come back, or something like it will come back. And I once gave away a whole lot of coins to street children, and it came back, literally physically manifested back in my wallet within like half an hour. It's extraordinary. I was like, what? You know, so you're not bound. The laws of the ego do not bind your experience when you open to the spirit. Anything's possible. It was that happened to show me that, you know, these physical laws don't apply, and actually, you know, unconditional love is the way to go. And that if I did that, then I would be taken care of. I would be looked after. It was a major lesson. And as a result of that, I went on this path of like, okay, so I'm gonna start teaching, you know, this teaching truth, and you know, dedicated my life to that. If I hadn't had that experience, maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know. So these experiences are there. The miracles happen to put you on the path, to help you get on the path and stay on the path. Okay. So any questions on number 1? Comments? Paragraph 1. So number 2, I embrace the dream of a released world. So someone else read that. John, maybe you can read that, or Elaine.
Yeah. I embrace the dream of the released world, leading to return to everlasting sanctity and pure formless awareness of perfect love. The vision of my true self is a storehouse of treasures for happiness, available to all who ask. It transforms what was once perceived as a home of sin into a center of redemption and mercy, where everyone is welcomed without judgment.
Okay. Available to all who ask, transforms what I once perceived as a home of sin into a center of redemption and mercy, unconditional love, maybe. Where everyone is welcomed without judgment.
Redemption is also an old-fashioned word. What does it really mean?
Awakening.
No.
A home of sin into a center, into a place. Place of awakening and unconditional love, where everyone is welcomed without judgment. And so the world becomes infused with my unconditional love. We realize that the only purpose of this world is to help us awaken, and everyone is on that journey. So I welcome everyone in as a companion on the journey back home, and that is a state of unconditional love, because I see them as I am. That's all that unconditional love means. They are exactly the same as me. They are a mind awakening from the dream of separation on their journey home, as I am. And so we are actually the same underneath any ideas of separation. We have this, the same fundamental awareness that is calling us back home, and we journey together back home. And then, if you perceive everyone that way, that's unconditional love. has nothing to do with the special love of the ego. There's none of the attachments that go along with that kind of love. It's just a free, open, very generous, giving love. Well, actually, why wouldn't I want to help you? Because you're on the same path as I am. And if I help you, then I'm really helping myself. You're just a mirror of my own true self. And so then the golden rule, do unto others as you have them do unto you, makes complete sense, you see. But without the thought system behind it, it doesn't make any sense. That's why the ego's never managed to sustain it. Because the ego thinks if I give to others, I'm losing myself. And then it feels less than and hardly done by. So it can't live according to the golden rule because its thought system won't allow it. And so you go back into a model, you see that this, where are we? Just find correct one. There we go. But very clearly, the interior makes a massive difference. Interior, what's happening interior, your mindset really influences everything that's going on in the material world. Your relationships, and what is life made up of really? But relationships. Every situation is a relationship. So your life is made up of situations, which are relationships, and your relationships are primarily influenced by mindset. Those are not physical, are they? Those are all happening in the domain of mind. So the scientific materialist paradigm just denies all that, and it's a very dysfunctional and an incomplete system. It doesn't offer any kind of comprehensive guidance on how to live your life at all. As a religion, if you're basing your life on that, it's so lopsided and incomplete that it's a joke. So how can you possibly base your life on that thought system when it doesn't even acknowledge your mind, which is primary, and then relationships, which is a collective. So it completely denies these interior quadrants. Okay. So do you want to summarize that second paragraph for us?
Yep.
John?
Yeah. It's saying that I merged with the idea of a completely free and released world, which is connected to pure formless awareness, and through that only happiness can come to me and those with whom I am in contact.
Yeah, it's a pretty good summary. So he's really focusing in on this Christ vision or true self's vision, saying, this is what's important to start using as your default perception in this world. That's going to transform what was once a home of sin and guilt into a place of awakening. Might as well. Sin, guilt, fear, and attack. A place of awakening and unconditional love where everyone is welcomed. Maybe let's make it first person, shall we? Where I welcome everyone. Active rather than passive. Our judgment. Okay. And Elaine, if you can read the final paragraph for us, please.
The lilies of letting go find their home in the innocent ground of my true self's vision, and they become messengers giving and receiving love. They carry their source's benevolence back to the world, transforming it into a blessed garden. This happy dream of a freed world is a gift from pure formless awareness, leading to a return to my unlost innocence and eternal love.
Oh, eternal. Yeah, formless awareness of perfect love. So it's talking about the happy dream. And we can see the world as a happy transition. It's not permanent, it's not ultimately real, but it's a place where we can have a happy dream as we transition from the ego's thought system and identity to our true selves. So all of it's designed to return me to my unlost innocence and eternal state. Which has always been there, but I've just departed from it, and I've invented a whole lot of other thoughts and ideas to cover this pure formless awareness over. Eternal state, eternal really state of pure formless, eternal pure formless awareness, perfect love. Okay, so yeah, do you want to summarize number 3, paragraph 3 for us?
Well, just that's a nice expression. The lilies of letting go find their home in the innocent ground of our true self's vision. So therefore, we are messengers of giving and receiving love, and giving it, and they then carry to their sources happiness and benevolence back to the world. So yeah, and then we're just all living in a blessed garden, in a happy dream, and freed in a freed world. The gift from pure formless awareness, and back to our innocence and eternal pure formless awareness of perfect love. Yeah, always very, yeah, nice paragraph.
So the only purpose of the world is that, you're here to have a happy dream as part of your awakening to the truth that is beyond the dream. But you may as well make it a happy one. In fact, you have to make it a happy one in order to awaken. You can't have a miserable dream and then awaken. You're awakening progressively to the reality of happiness as ultimate reality. So then you have the happy dream while you're still here in form, you're living your life out, and ultimately you transcend and go beyond it entirely. Okay, and then there's just a key message, which is the very essence of it. So, if you can't read anything else, you can read the key message and just remind yourself of what it's saying. So, wants to read that. I think it's Christine again.
I can only give what I have received, and true possession lies in the act of giving. By giving healing, release, and love, I find healing and release. I can experience this true possession in extending the vision of my true self as the bridge between worlds, and living the happy dream of a released world leading to pure formless awareness of perfect love.
So as I extend the vision of my true self, and make it the perception. No, I quite like vision. See, there's a bridge between worlds. I live a happy dream. I'm crossing the bridge, and that bridge leads to pure formless awareness of perfect love. So I'm in the world, and I'm happy. I'm having a happy dream here, and I can be fully present and engaged and in the now. But I know that it's leading me out of the world. There's no attachment to this world anymore. So it becomes very light and free, and there's none of the heaviness and the darkness of the ego's thought system. Which is why it's called enlightenment. It's very light. There's no heaviness to it. And so I walk through the world, and the world, the real world that I'm now living in, becomes the bridge between the worlds, between the material world of the ego and the pure formless awareness of perfect love of the spirit. And I carry the spirit with me to lighten my steps and make me a happy dream, and help others to join me on that journey of happiness. And it can all be very light and easy and flowing and gracious, and that's the best we can do in this world. There's no other better way of living your life. So he's painting a picture for us and saying, well, do you want it? Surely this is a better reality than you're currently experiencing. And if you're honest, we'd say yes. And then he says, okay, well, follow me. Keep practicing these teachings, because this will lead you to this enlightened state where everything, is pretty effortless and easy, and you're in a happy dream while you are awakening to the ultimate truth beyond the dream. And that's your only real purpose here. Okay, so any other thoughts, comments, or questions on this lesson? Done a quick summary, a key message, gives you the gist of what the lesson's saying. Would you like to do a meditation on it? And then we'll go into the text. Or we can just go straight into the text. Never mind.
I'm happy to go straight to the text, actually.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go for
Yeah,
this.
all right,
too.
that's the consensus. Okay, so let's have a look at text. So this, just get the recordings going. All right. So okay, so we're breaking down this section into parts because it's a long, very long section. Section 4 of chapter 19, called the Obstacles to Peace. And this is a subsection of A, which was the desire to get rid of it. If you recall, he was talking about that's the desire to get rid of guilt, desire to get rid of peace. And then as a subsection, he's giving us a teaching here on the attraction of guilt, which is a major obstacle to peace. Okay, so attraction of guilt, looks like not much to translate there, so we'll do it in the alternative. And I think it's Elaine. Is that Elaine or John? Anyone, doesn't matter, whoever wants to read.
I'm happy to read.
Okay.
The attraction of guilt produces fear of love. For love can never perceive guilt at all. The attraction of guilt produces fear of love.
Mm-hmm.
Can we unpack that one a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. Why do you think that is?
I'm just working on the word, the attraction of guilt. I know we've talked about it before, but the attraction of guilt is the avoidance of love, isn't it? We don't have to. We avert responsibility by going into guilt.
Yeah, so I mean, let's maybe just have a look at our diagram. Might help to explain it. Go back to this, which explains where guilt fits into the system. Yeah, so you've got guilt and sin that underlie the individual identity. So the attraction of guilt is that it gives you an individual identity, and it confirms that you really are individual and unique and special and so on. So that's why we're addicted to guilt, because it seemingly reinforces our special self, which we cherish. And then he's saying, well, by being attracted to guilt, this produces fear of love. So now, because I'm believing in my special self, guilt is reinforcing that. I must fear perfect love, because perfect love will destroy my separate self. I feel very threatened by this this power that I've denied, but I can never fully deny it. So it's always in my awareness, and the ego knows that there's something else. Which it must now fear, because it's identified itself as, well, I'm separate from that, and the attraction of guilt is really the attraction of having a separate identity. Separate identity named, which then makes you special, but specialness is threatened by pure formless awareness of perfect love. So you must then fear love, because that's going to undo your identity. That makes sense? That's why the attraction of guilt produces fear of love. Whereas if you weren't attracted to it, you weren't attracted to the guilt, there would be no attraction in maintaining a special self.
No.
Why do I want a special self that's gonna have to defend itself and fear love and live in a state of fear that doesn't offer me anything? So you've got to find guilt completely unattractive, everything it offers you, and that's the way of stripping away, really taking the foundation away from the ego. That's what letting go of guilt and sin does. There's no foundation anymore for the special identity that the ego offers you.
And equally so, I suppose, if we lose interest in being a separate self, we also let go of guilt.
They're mutually self-reinforcing. I'm not guilty, and letting go of guilt is one way to start reducing the power of the individual self. And another is to, you could focus on the specialness, say, well, I'm not really a special self, and I'm going to let go of my special attachments and desires and so on. And then that's going to lessen your guilt. And think about how that plays out in the world. So if you're very invested in your special self, and you've got, well, no, it just has to be my way, everything's got to go my way, what you will tend to do is then be selfish. And then you'll feel guilty for that, won't you? See how it works. The special self engenders guilt. And then what you've really done there is increase the fear. Now you feel like you're going to be punished for your sin. So there's a false expectation of punishment appearing real, and what you're doing is fearing love. That's really what fear is. So it's all bound up into a thought system. You see that? The ego is a thought system, and he's helping us to unwind it by focusing on aspects of it. So, okay, so let's look at guilt in this one. Let's look at the attraction of guilt. Not just guilt, but the attraction of it. Why are you attracted by guilt? And what purpose does that serve?
Mm.
And the only purpose it serves is to reinforce the special self and reinforce your fear of love. So you feel more disconnected, more separate from your source, more identified with the individual self that you've made, and that guilt is that's what it does. So why would you be attracted to that when you understand the consequences? Because once you do this, you have a special self and you've got guilt and sin going on, then the consequences are inevitable. You will have fear. You will fear a fearful, wrathful, vengeful God. So the fear of God or love is inevitable. You will project that out, and so you'll create drama outside. There'll be accusation, blame, attack. There'll be increasing levels of that if you can continue that. And you will believe that you're a victim of an unfair, cruel world, living a helpless, innovative little life with limitation, lack, loneliness, and suffering before you die. That is the consequence of the attraction of guilt. So do you really want that? Or wanting to see that actually guilt offers you nothing?
Actually, I was reading this afternoon just a bit of an earlier passage on shadows of the past. And it's, to forgive is merely to remember only the loving thoughts you gave in the past and those that were given you. All the rest must be forgotten. Forgiveness is a selective remembering based not on your selection. The shadow figures you would make immortal are enemies of reality. Now, it's focusing on only thinking about past positives, and letting go of negative.
Yeah. So it's a selective remembering. Which requires mind training, requires a lot of mental strength and focus to do that, but it is possible.
So every time we dwell on a past misdemeanor, we need to get back into the holy instant.
Yeah, exactly. And whenever your mind is drawn to, oh, well, I did this thing wrong, or someone else did this thing wrong, you're perpetuating guilt and a separate identity. And the letting go, somebody says, no, that's not correct, because in truth, none of it ever really happened. Right? You were dreaming. And by feeling guilty about the dream, you're dreaming again. You're now bringing the past into the present, and your dream continues. You're still stuck in your dream world when you're feeling guilty. Based on a reality that's not real, that's never really happened, that's not even there, and yet the mind tells us that it's there and it has happened because we've experienced it seemingly. So it just takes a whole load of undoing, doesn't it? Because you think of how deeply entrenched these ideas are. And most people take it for granted. Well, the past has happened, and that's happened, and that's happened. The whole story is true and real. And so, well, how can I forgive it then? How can I just let it go? And you can only do it if you question the fundamental reality of it and say, no. It's something real.
Okay, thanks, John.
I never perceive guilt at all.
So the attraction of guilt produces fear of love, for love can never perceive guilt. It is the nature of love to look upon only the truth. For there it perceives itself, with which it would unite in wholly aware union and completion. As love must overlook fear, so must fear deny love. As love must overlook fear, which it must, so must fear deny love in order to protect its self-identity.
Yeah. Love must look past fear. I've said overlook or look past. So must fear deny love, you know, because they're mutually opposite. Love says, well, there's no guilt or sin because there's no special self. So there's no reason to fear. Fear is just a false expectation of punishment appearing real, which is not justified given that none of this is true. So love must overlook fear, but fear, being the ego's whole thought system, remember, uses fear as a placeholder for the whole thing. So that could be at the top here: fear, ego, consciousness, fear, belief in separation. It's all the ego's thought system. Fear must deny love in order to perpetuate the individual self. If it accepts pure formless awareness of perfect love, then it's no the individual self, which it cherishes, is no longer there. So it must deny love in order to maintain its identity. You see the pickle the ego has got it, and by creating an individual identity that is really the denial of love, it's doomed itself to never have love. It can't ever experience or accept genuine love, and it's doomed to maintain its existence in an unloving state of awareness forever. Well, once you realize that, you know, surely its days are numbered, because you're like, well, why would I want to believe in a self that is doomed to be unloved and unlovable forever, and doomed to suffer and die forever? This is not smart, when actually perfect love is available just outside of this thought system. So then, you know, the logical answer is to let go of the thought system. That's the problem. Reality is what it is. The thought system that denies reality is the problem. So, you know, let it go, which is what Yeshua's teaching us to do. Don't try and reinforce this thought system, or try and make reality what scientific materialist paradigm does. This is right. They say this is correct. This is our fixed dogma. We are right. And therefore everything that is wrong, everything else, it must be wrong. And even though there's abundant evidence for pure formless awareness of perfect love that comes into the dream, and you can see it if you open to it, they won't see it. So that all the blue arrows, which is the Holy Spirit trying to correct their minds, are ignored, and they only focus on the red stuff. And Yeshua's saying, no, you need to do the opposite. Focus only on the blue, only the happy memories, you know, only what is loving and kind. Focus on that, because that's going to take you back, and everything else needs to be let go of. You don't believe in its truth anymore, and that's the only way to free your mind and ride these arrows back into the awareness they came from, which is what they're designed to do. The Holy Spirit's designed to help you to go from your misperceptions, ride the arrow back. That's the transformation of perception. Letting go would be the Holy Spirit's reinterpretation of the dream, and you ride it back all the way back into your home, which is pure formless awareness of perfect love. And if you keep doing that, eventually you just rest here, and it's the game's over. There's no need to come as a separate self anymore. You've awoken fully to this, and you remain there for all eternity.
Good, nice, yeah. I've forgotten where we got to.
Is it helpful to reference the diagram, just so
it is actually, yeah, it is.
Physics?
Yeah, it is.
Well, I know we've been through the diagram many times, but it illustrates the whole system in one simple visual. So then it's quite useful when you go into this kind of metaphysics, which he's talking about, to then go, okay, well, just understand where we're at and how the whole system works.
Yeah. I think we're on number 3. As love must overlook fear, so must fear deny love. For love contains the end of guilt, as surely as fear depends on it. Love is attracted only to love. Overlooking guilt completely, it perceives no fear. Being wholly without attack, it could not be afraid. Fear is attracted to what love does not perceive. And each believes fear is attracted to what love does not perceive. Would that be better if it said fear is attracted to what I perceive without love? Is that what it's saying?
Well, he's talking about the thought systems. So fear is the one thought system, being the ego's thought system, and love is the other, being the Holy Spirit. So he's contrasting them, saying fear is attracted to what love does not.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's attracted to guilt and sin and attack thoughts. Because that makes the separate self real, and that's all fear is serving is the separate self. And love overlooks all this. Love simply says, well, there is no guilt or sin because there is no individual self, because there's no separation. The idea of separation doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, it's good.
I overlook all of its seeming consequences because the fundamental thought is false. And fear says, no. I believe in separation. Separation is the foundation stone of fear's thought system. So completely disagrees with love and says, no, the separation is real and love is unreal because the separation denies love. And so, of course, they're going to be in complete disagreement because they've got a completely different premise. The one premise is only pure formless awareness of perfect love is real. And the other premise is no, actually, that's not real. What's real is what's apart from pure formless awareness of perfect love, is what's separate from it. Totally the opposite. So you're never going to reconcile those. And then the opposite is really just a denial of what is true. That's all that the ego is. It's made up of a denial of what is true, of what does exist. And so it's the negative entity, isn't it? It's completely negative of truth. It only exists because it negates the truth. And now you're starting to understand the seeming duality of this world. It's a negative seeming reality. So duality only exists because one truth has been negated in our minds, and now that seems to have its own existence, but it doesn't really. It's just it only exists because it seems to negate that which does exist. It has no existence of its own. You see that? It's completely dependent on negating the truth for its reality.
Yeah.
The truth pre-existed it, and then it comes along and says, no, I'll deny that and I'll negate it, and then that gives it some kind of identity. And then we think that this is now real, but we're actually in complete denial of the truth in this thought system. And that's why it doesn't work. It's so dysfunctional, because the whole thing is a denial and negation of the truth. But just like the darkness, darkness doesn't really exist. Darkness is merely an absence of light. And when you shine the light, the darkness goes, because the darkness had no positive quality of its own. You see that? It was merely an absence of what does have existence.
Yeah, no, all makes sense, John. Good.
And that's why only one of them is true. Logically, when you understand this, you can see that only love can be true, because fear is just a negation of that which pre-existed. Yet And that reconciles with, our understanding of science and, the Big Bang. Okay, so where did that one free miracle that Rupert Sheldrake talked about, where did that come from? Well, they can't explain it, can they? So give us one free miracle, we'll take it from there. Okay, but you have a major problem because you can't explain where that came from. Where did all the matter and energy in the universe come from there? Oh, no, we'll just ignore that. And we'll just take it from the moment of t equals, 0.00001 second. We'll take it from there, but we have no idea how that all arose. And this explains it. It tells you how it arose. There was a pre-existing mind that now had an idea of separation. In the negation of pure formless awareness, this massive explosion of thought outwards, which then became energy, happened, and seemingly happened, and then we literally went out of our minds, created a false alternate reality. Is that, Christine? Does that compute? Is that kind of making sense? Are you reconciling the science and the quantum mechanics with this teaching? Because if you can start to connect the dots, you go, oh wow, it all does line up. It all makes sense. And when I came across this, I was like, okay, finally, someone's actually giving me the whole picture. Because I was like, well, where did it all come from then? And that's not adequately answered by science at all. They say the Big Bang, but then they have no explanation for where that came from. So there's a big like black hole in their system, which they can't address without demolishing the entire thought system. And if they go there, then they have to acknowledge the reality of God and this transcendent awareness that pre-existed time and space, and then they're no longer scientists; they become philosophers and mystics. And of course, their separate self-concept can't go there. Mostly, Einstein was pretty unusual actually, because he was quite awakened in that he wasn't that attached to his self-concept. He didn't define himself as a scientist. He was just, he was seeking the truth. He was an explorer. Whereas I think too often now scientists define themselves by what they're doing. Okay, well, this is what I'm doing, and I'm a scientist, and therefore I have to believe in the scientific materialist paradigm because that's my self-concept. And then they say they're objective. I mean, you're not objective. Your self-concept is at work all the time in all of your experiments, in all of your observations, and all the papers you write. You can't get away from your self-concept, because who's perceiving and who's writing these these theories? So there's no objective reality. That's and that's what quantum mechanics says. There's no reality in the absence of observation. So it's in their own science, but very few scientists can understand it because they're too blocked by their self-concept. It doesn't allow them to see it.
I do get the feeling that the scientists are not so hardcore as they were 5 years ago. They are moving towards spirituality.
Yeah, and I think it's because it doesn't matter how much they try and solve the problems of consciousness and things that science can't explain, they can't solve it within the scientific materialist paradigm. So eventually, if you have any kind of integrity as a scientist, you have to say, okay, well, this clearly isn't working. Maybe the theory's wrong. Maybe we need to, consider another theory, a more, expansive theory that would incorporate these kinds of observations that we make. And so that, more kind of enlightened scientists are starting to move there. And then there's at the top of the tree, the mystic and the scientist become one. It's the same. They'll see the same. They'll come to the same awareness, as we see with Einstein. He's saying things like that are, higher philosophical statements of truth, because he's got there through science rather than through any religious path. But it all, comes back to the same truth, because there is only one truth. There's not multiple truths. There's only one truth. And the laws of chaos, which I think we'll get to shortly. Yeshua talks about the laws of chaos of the ego, and one of them is that the truth is different for everyone. Oh, well, my truth and your truth are different, and that's okay. We all have different truths, and that's fine. So, that's ridiculous. There's only one truth that explains reality. You can't have multiple truths. There's different perspectives on it, and there's different paths to get to it, yes, but there's only one ultimate truth. And we're on the path to that. This teaching, I mean, I don't know a better teaching that combines the metaphysics, so it can explain quantum mechanics and cosmology. It can explain what science doesn't explain, but it's also got this deep understanding of the human psyche and relationships and psychological concepts, all embedded into this one teaching. And it's all being taught to us by this master teacher who, amazingly, 2,000 years ago, he understood all this. That's just incredible. He was way ahead of his time, wasn't he? And now he's laid it all out in a mind training course for us, so that we can really study it and understand what he understood. Wow, we're very lucky. Much more so than his disciples. Yeah.
And personalizing it like this, it brings it down to humanity, where we can envisage being the Christ.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
Walking
no
that
longer
path.
third person disconnected from you. It's like I, which is his intention. I mean, I think this translation, I'm being guided. It's not like out of accord with the spirit of the course. In fact, it's just the evolution of it. He gave this 60 years ago. The world was a very different place 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago. Things have moved on. People have evolved. The mind has evolved. Okay, so we need, the same teaching, but just a different form of it that's more accessible for the modern mind, which is why we're doing this. So it becomes more accessible for a lot more people, and they can start to understand it, because it's not actually a difficult teaching. And it's a shame that it's got, for a lot of people it is perceived as difficult, and then they put the book down and it sits on bookshelves around the world and isn't used. And it's a living truth. It's meant to be lived and experienced in your life, not just, it's not just a book that you kind of read as a theoretical exercise. It becomes the way you live your life. Anyway, that's the mission, is to get it out there in a much more understandable way. So where were we, John? Sorry for that digression.
No.
Being holy without attack, it cannot be afraid.
Being holy without attack, it cannot be afraid. Fear is attracted to what love does not perceive, and each believes that what the other perceives does not exist. Fear views guilt with just the same devotion that love views itself. And each has energies which it sends forth as its messengers, and which return to it with messages of the same energetic frequency.
Maybe just read the original there. You can see what he said.
Yes. Fear looks, and each has messengers which it sends. Oh, it just says, and each has messengers which it sends forth, and which return to it with messages written in the language in which they're going forth was asked.
Yeah. So what are the messengers he's talking about, which it sends forth? So it's an energy. I translated as each has energy, which it sends forth as its messengers, and which return to it with messages of the same kind, the same energetic frequency. If you want to put it in sort of more modern terms that people might understand, that's what he's meaning. It comes back, as you give out, so it comes back to you. What goes around comes around. We all sort of, anyone who's had any kind of experience with law of attraction sort of starts to understand that. So now we just put it in those terms and say, okay, so as you put it out there, so it comes back to you. If you put out a loving energy into the world, then that tends to come back to you. And if you put out a fearful, attacking, hating energy, then that will come back to you. And you will start to have experiences according to which thought system is governing your mind. That's law of attraction 101. That's really what he's saying here. But he's going beyond, just the flatland law of attraction. Flatland law of attraction says, well, it's really still about the material world. So the Secret et al. I don't know if you ever went there. and read that book or watched the,
Yeah.
but it was still within the scientific materialist paradigm, because it was saying that actually what you're trying to do now is use your mind to get what you think you want and need on the external, and that is what's going to make you happy. So it wasn't really seriously challenging the scientific materialist paradigm of the ego. It was actually reinforcing it, because it's saying, well, you need to use your mind to get stuff that you think you want and need, and that's going to make you happy. That was the underlying assumption. Okay, but actually you're still focusing on the external, and you're still then denying the truth that actually everything you need to be happy is in you, because you think you need something outside of you to be happy. So that's why the law of attraction, and that doesn't really work to bring lasting happiness, because you're still seeking and desiring, and then, you know, as the Buddha noticed, desire is the source of all suffering. So then you suffer because you don't get what you want. Whereas this, a pure non-dual teaching, says, no, just go here and find the source of happiness within you. And you don't need to manifest and attract anything in the external world to be happy. You're already happy. What shows up externally from your inner state of happiness and love is a bonus. That's just, okay, it shows up and that's great, you know, no problem. But I'm not attached to it. It's just a consequence. It's an outcome of being rooted in my true self, and these things will start to show up. And that's the difference between miracles and magic. Magic says I need something outside of myself, and so I'm going to use my mind to create that. And the miracle says, no, I have everything within me already. I can just be happy as I am. And if stuff shows up on the external, I'm grateful for it, but I don't need it and I don't want it. There's no desire in me. It just shows up because I've changed my mind fundamentally. Do you see the difference between those thought systems? That's the difference between miraculous manifestation, if you want to call it, and conscious manifestation, magic manifestation. And it's a fundamental difference, because the one perpetuates the self-concept of the ego, the separate self, and the other one frees you from that and takes you back home into the deeper part of your mind, which is where reality exists, and where you realize I don't need anything. You know, what shows up on the external, it's just confirmation. It's just a confirmation I'm on the right path. I'm not needing or wanting or desiring anything anymore, because why do I need anything or want anything when I have it all? It's already within me. See, and that's something that was never part of the Secret's teachings. So they didn't go there, did they? It was always, no, you need something outside of you, and so the assumption then is that you're somehow not quite good enough as you are, and so it just perpetuates the ego's thought system of not good enough, which is why people won't really find healing through that. So another level beyond the law of attraction is this is the true law of attraction. Okay, so go into love and let it send out its messengers, these frequencies, this energy, and let it then bring them back to you in the form that it sees fit. You're not trying to control that or manipulate that at all. It will happen as love itself designs it to happen. So you see, you're surrendering now. It's not you who's doing it. You're just surrendering to whatever shows up from this loving awareness that you've accepted into your mind. And so that's very easy. There's no doubt, there's no desire, there's no disappointment, because you're not focused on form at all. You're just focused on love. Does that make sense?
Yeah, good.
Okay. So do you want to give a little summary of that, John, in your own words?
Yeah. So it's saying, beware the attraction of guilt. which we have because we want to reinforce our sense of separation. And the attraction of guilt will reinforce our individuality and our sense of separation, and further separate us out from love. Whereas love doesn't see separation, doesn't even see fear, and unites us with our true selves.
And they're completely opposite. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
The key points. And he makes that point over and over and over again, doesn't he? He says,
Yeah.
these are completely opposite, and you'll never reconcile them, so don't even try. You can't fudge it. As did you watch Rupert Sheldrake's video? It was very funny. The bit about intellectual phase locking. So he says to the chief metrologist, he says, so what do you call it when you fudge it? Oh, no, we don't like to use that word. He says, we call it intellectual phase locking. So the ego's not honest. It's like, oh, okay, we'll give it some fancy name, but actually you're just fudging and dressing it up in some fancy scientific terminology, intellectual phase locking. And it's not surprising, they banned that TED talk. TED actually removed it from their platform. It's just outrageous because it was a very good talk. It was very well thought out. He's a respected scientist, published author. How dare they, really? But that's the ego for you. And they banned another one at the same one. It's a guy called Graham Hancock, who gave a talk on the use of plant medicines, and they banned that as well. I would have loved to have been there. It must have been a great evening. So when two things get banned, then there's truth there. Anyway, it's an aside. So I'm happy to move on to next paragraph.
Yep.
Number 11. So this is just an extension. We did the first 9 yesterday, and this is subsection 1 of A. So that's why we've got paragraph 11 rather than paragraph 2. So but I thought to do 17 paragraphs or something yesterday would have been too much. So let's break it down to manageable bite-sized chunks. Okay. So Christine, if you can read the next one. Love's messengers. Reading the alternative, pretty straightforward. Love's messages are gently sent.
Love's messengers are gently sent and return with messages of love and gentleness. The messengers of fear are harshly ordered to seek out guilt and cherish every scrap of evil and sin that they can find, losing none of them on pain of death and laying them respectfully before their Lord and Master. Perception cannot obey 2 masters, each seeking for messages of different things in different languages. There's
Asking for messages.
What fear wants to feed upon, love overlooks, and what fear demands, love cannot even perceive. The fierce attraction that guilt holds for fear is wholly absent from love's gentle perception. What love perceives is meaningless to fear and quite invisible.
Yeah, quite invisible. So you see, fear focuses on form and denies the intangible, the invisible. Denies the formless, because that's where the threat lies. So what better way of denying the truth, but by denying that we even have a mind? You see how cunning the ego is. By saying, by the scientific materialist paradigm, saying well, actually, reality lies outside of you, literally, out of your mind. You remain out of your mind. You think you're a body. You think you're a product of your body and your brain. By denying the mind, you deny the source of healing. You'll never find who you are because you've denied that you even have a mind. I mean, isn't that just the biggest defense of the ego? And that's what fear does. That's why it focuses on form, and it denies this interior reality completely at the extreme of it. Even though fear is you thinking, clearly fear is a thought. It's part of a thought system. It will deny that you even have a mind. So then, what's thinking then? You ask the scientists, how can you deny there's a mind if you're thinking? You're consciously aware now. You have thoughts going on. How can you deny that? But they attempt to, as a defense of the ego, to deny the source, to deny the state, the place where we'll find our true self. And that's just the biggest defense of the ego. So we think we're bodies, and we don't even think we have a mind. So how can we change our mind if we don't even have one? You see. And that's the scientific materialist paradigm for you in a nutshell. And it's why you'll never agree. If you're coming from this perspective, the interior, someone is rooted in the scientific materialist paradigm, they're going to think you're crazy. And you're going to go, well, you're just completely crazy. You're delusional. And both think the other is delusional. That's what he's saying here, isn't it? Cannot obey two masters. Each one, thinks the other is completely crazy. And only one of them is right. You have to choose, which one you're going to honor. But once you start looking at the thought system of fear carefully, no one in his right mind would choose that. It's completely insane. Just look at its results. And it should be self-evident that, who would choose that. But people do all the time. That's still the dominant thought system of this world. So what love perceives as meaningless to fear is meaningless and quite invisible. Let's just bring it into there. So they deny and then they negate each other. And this is why you can't fudge it. You can't reconcile them and say, well, I have a little bit of love and a little bit of fear, and that's somehow okay. No, because the one denies the other completely. Same way as light and dark. You can't have light and darkness together. Once you shine the light, the darkness is gone. And darkness only exists when there's an absence of light. Okay, so you want to just summarize number 2 in your own words briefly. What's he saying?
It's the story of my life.
What? This paragraph? Okay.
As you say, they're like two enemies, love and fear. And those in the material world just think you're totally crazy if you believe in love and in the invisible. So it's so nice to see it here in print because it validates it for me.
Yeah.
So love's messengers are gentle, and the gentleness as opposed to the harshness of the guilt and every scrap of evil and sin. Losing none of them on pain of death, and death can be a beautiful transition, and laying them respectfully before their Lord and Master. And each,
what comes to me here, have you seen Lord of the Rings?
yes,
You remember those the Black Riders? That comes to, because it's like, right, these messengers of this dark Lord go forth, and they cherish every scrap of evil and sin, and they bring it back to their master. Very well written and demonstrated in the movie. So showing a complete contrast between the thought systems, and they just cannot reconcile. So in the end, one has to defeat the other. There's no happy resolution between them. The one's got to go.
So the next 5 sentences just spell it out how different these two masters are. Each asking for messages of different things in different languages. What fear wants to feed upon, love overlooks. What fear demands, love cannot even perceive. And the fierce attraction that guilt holds for fear is wholly absent from love's gentle perception. What love perceives is meaningless and quite invisible to fear. So beautifully said.
Yeah, I mean, so eloquent and just so well explained. This isn't difficult language. I mean, we're just translating slightly, but it's actually all there in the original. There's very little to change. So, stating the case once again, just 2 masters, you must choose which one you serve. And you can't serve both because they completely contradict each other. Okay, any other thoughts, comments, or questions on number 11, paragraph 11? Should we move to 12 then? Relationships in this world, a result of how the world is seen. So let's go to the original alternative. Elaine, if you can read this one for us.
Relationships in this world are the result of how the world is seen. And this depends on which emotion was called on to send its messengers to look upon it and return with word of what they saw. Fear's messengers are trained through terror and are terrible when their master calls on them to serve him. For fear is merciless even to its friends. Its messengers steal guiltily away in hungry search of guilt, for they are kept cold and starving and made very vicious by their master, who allows them to feast only upon what they return to him. No little shred of guilt escapes their hungry eyes, and in their savage search for sin, they pounce on any living thing they see and carry it screaming to their master to be devoured.
Wow.
It's a bit different to Christine's paragraph. I'd rather have Christine's paragraph.
Yeah, well, this is a stick. We call it the carrot and the stick. So that's a carrot. The previous one is beautiful because he's talking about love's messengers, and then
so I've got the
contrast is fear's messengers, and what happens there. And
this is relevant to
again, just sort of Lord of the Rings comes to the mind. It's just like these evil messengers and pouncing on guilt, and very well depicted in these movies. They're teachings to teach us the thought systems. It shows you the clear contrast between the two thought systems. The savage search for sin. They pounce on any living thing they see and carry it screaming to their master to be devoured. So they're looking, the ego looks for guilt and sin in everything and sees the sinful everywhere, and then brings it back to the master, being the belief in separation. To be devoured there, well, what he means is to be condemned. Carry it screaming to their master to be condemned, maybe. To be condemned and killed, maybe I'll say. rather than devoured. And condemned and killed is more illustrative of what the ego is trying to do. So it's trying to condemn everyone and everything and then kill it. The punishment for sin is death. So it is a death wish. And everything is then perceived as dying, condemned and killed. And the reason he's so graphic in his descriptions is he wants us to be horrified and a bit shocked. Oh my God, that's just awful. How can I choose that? Well, exactly. You choose to be a special self in any way. You choose guilt in any way. You choose sin in any way. Well, you're choosing that. Is that what you really want? It's like awful reality that watching movies like Lord of the Rings can be helpful because it shows you the contrast so graphically. How awful the one is, and the other, therein lies your only hope. And that's where the heroes exist, in the other thought system, facing the darkness and trying to undo it in their own minds, primarily. But it gets played out, obviously, in the movie. Okay, so any thoughts on that, Elaine? Do you want to give a little summary of that? What's he saying here?
Well, we're back onto the extreme of love. It's guilt feeding guilt, and we want to we want our friends to be the same, hungry and searching for it, and we keep them cold and starving and made very vicious for their masters, so that so it allows them to feast only upon what they return to him. So it's all just quite vicious, and it's not quite, it's very...
Yeah, it's awful. It's hell.
Yeah.
This is describing is a picture of hell here. And it's messengers, which emotion was called on to send its messengers. So, depending on which you call upon, you send its messengers. Messengers are your sense perceptions to perceive it and to bring it what it wants. So fear wants to see sin and guilt, so it does. Maybe we could translate call on to send its messengers to, how might we say, to instruct. Depends on which emotion was called on, to instruct the senses to perceive it. Command the senses to perceive it, whichever emotion is called upon, and return with word of what they saw. Evidence of what they saw. Well, does that make sense? If we change it like that, the messengers are commanding the senses, called on to command the senses to perceive it and return with evidence of what they saw.
Yeah.
Evidence of what they perceived. So here's messengers. Here's sense perceptions are trained through terror, and they tremble when they master calls on them to serve. Yet. Christine's gone. Okay. Fear is merciless even to its friends. Messengers are its perceptions. Its perceptions steal guiltily away and hungry search for guilt, for they're kept cold and starving and very vicious animosity, allows them to feast only upon what they return to it. A little shred of guilt escapes their hungry eyes. So we perceive, if we in the ego system, we look for guilt and we look for sin and we look for evil and we focus on it and we make it real. And we pounce on any living thing we see and carry it, screaming to the master to be condemned and killed. Whoa. Okay. This is
Heavy
this
stuff.
is an ugly thought system.
Yeah.
And this is what's going on underneath. You know, this is under the surface of most people's conscious awareness. It's all subconscious. And so we wonder why we have a world that is the way it is, a world where there's, you know, so much anger and hatred and attack and pain and suffering. It's because this is what's governing people.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, you know, we must condemn and kill, attack and fear and condemn and kill, and this gets acted out in form. And you know, these behaviors, whether it's you know, most people don't do it physically, but that does happen, as we know. People do get violent and actually kill, murder. But for a lot of the time, people just act it out, and they act it out in their relationships. So they do it with their words and their actions. You know, they say and do hurtful things. So the part of their mind that knows, well, you can't actually act it out physically because then you go to prison. So, but then we use our words and our actions to hurt. But it's the same intent behind it. You know, when you attack someone and you say something unkind, what are you doing? You're saying, I actually want to condemn you and kill you. You know, and it's that stark, it's that brutal. That's the truth. So we've got to look at it very honestly and say, I want no part of this thought system. It needs to be let go of entirely. I cannot tolerate it in my mind anymore. Okay, happy with number 12. Shall we move on to 13?
Yeah. Send not these savage messengers into the world, to feast upon it and to prey upon reality. For they bring you word of bones and skin and flesh. They have been taught to seek for the corruptible, and to return with gorges filled with things decayed and rotted. To them such things are beautiful, because they seem to allay their savage pangs of hunger. For they are frantic with the pain of fear, and would avert the punishment of him who sends them forth by offering him what they hold dear. Alternatively, I will not send these savage perceptions into the world to feast upon it and to prey upon reality, for they will bring me messages of bones, skin, and flesh. I have been taught to seek for the corruptible. I have been taught to seek for the corruptible.
Yeah, maybe I've been taught by them.
Yes.
Savage perceptions. I've been taught by them. The messengers are your savage perceptions. To seek for the corruptible and to return with gorges. Now, what is a gorge? Filled with things decayed and rotted.
Yeah.
Gorge. The gorge is
Gorge.
narrow valley, yes.
Ravine.
Archaic, the throat. It's a throat. It's a
the
large
throat.
amount greedily. fill oneself with food. So it's the throat, gorges, so throat.
Yes.
So and to return with
with throat,
rotting,
with decayed and rotting.
with perceptions, maybe. Return with well, maybe minds. We don't even need throats. He's using the imagery. But to return with minds filled with perceptions, filled with decayed and rotting.
Misperceptions. Yeah.
Misperceptions. And so every day, if you live in the ego's world, every day you go out and you return with a mind filled with these decayed and rotting misperceptions, and you wonder why you're not happy. How can you be? Because your perceptions are trained to focus on what is evil, what is sinful, what is guilty, what is decaying, what is aging, what is dying. And you notice that people are in the ego. They do focus on these things. Oh,
Yeah.
did you hear about so and so? They're sick. Oh, this person died, and they focused a lot of their attention on it. Their mind is filled with these perceptions of fear. And of course, inevitably they're going to be next, aren't they? And you think that way, like, well, my time will come and death will come, and that's the only certainty that the ego holds out. Inevitable death.
So number 4, to me, such things are beautiful because they seem to allay my savage pangs of hunger.
No, so it's talking about they. I will not send these.
Okay.
These savage perceptions.
Oh yeah.
The savage perceptions.
Yeah.
Such things are beautiful because they seem to allay. Allay. Another word for that. Allay sort of means mitigate, doesn't it? Diminish or put at rest, fear, suspicion, or worry, relieve or alleviate a pain or hunger.
Relieve, perhaps.
Relieve, because they seem to relieve their savage pangs.
Them such things are beautiful because they seem to relieve their savage pangs of hunger.
Hunger for hunger for evil.
For they are frantic with the pain of fear and would avert the punishment of him who sends them forth by offering him what they hold dear.
Trying to avoid the punishment of him as the belief in separation. Punishment of the belief separation. Sends them forth. Commands them, which commands them to go out into the world by offering it what they hold dear, what they value. read it from the top.
I will not send these savage perceptions into the world to feast upon it and to prey upon reality. For they will bring me messages of bone, skin, and flesh. I have been taught by them to seek for the corruptible and to return with minds filled with decayed and rotting misperceptions. To them, such things are beautiful because they seem to relieve their savage pangs of hunger for evil. For they are frantic with the pain of fear and are trying to avoid the punishment of the belief in separation, which commands them to go out into the world by offering it what they value.
Okay, so what's he saying here? The last sentence, do you understand that? What he's saying there? They are frantic with the pain of fear, trying to avoid the punishment of the belief in separation. Okay, so there's this idea of a fearful, wrathful, vengeful God going on in the mind. Concept of a fearful, wrathful, vengeful God, which is, of course, the ego. And now we frantic with the pain of fear. So the fear becomes so acute that we try and escape. We're trying to avoid the punishment of the belief in separation, which commands them to go out into the world by offering it what they hold dear. So this is an illusion, this concept of a fearful, wrathful, vengeful God. These sense perceptions go out into the world commanded by this belief in separation, and we offer to them the misperceptions of accusation, blame, complaint, attack, because somehow he's saying the mind believes that if it does that it's not going to be punished. You know? So what he's referring to here is the projection of guilt outwards onto someone or something else in an attempt to get rid of it. So if I project it onto someone else, then I won't be guilty, and I won't be the one who's punished. They will be. That's the misperception of the ego. So that's what he's referring to here, I think, from the frantic with the pain of fear, trying to avoid the punishment of the belief in separation, which commands them to go out into the world by offering it what they value. Okay? So we offer to it the perceptions of accusation, blame, complaint, and attack, because we think that is going to alleviate the guilt, and we will then get off scot-free. We won't be punished. That's the mechanism of the ego. Always doesn't know how to handle the guilt, so it says someone else is guilty, and it seeks to project its guilt onto them, and that's why we condemn others. And that's why we then have these perceptions which offer the belief in separation what the perceptions value, which is sin and guilt. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Happy to move on to 14 then. And the Holy Spirit. Needs a translation. Elaine, if you can read this one.
The remembrance of perfect love has given me love's messengers to send instead of those I trained through fear. They are as eager to return to me
we'll make it perceptions, love's perceptions, to send love's perceptions to original love's messengers, to send love's perceptions to send, he means to perceive for me, instead of those I trained through fear. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Well, number 2, they are as eager.
They are as eager to return to me what they hold dear as are the others. If I send them forth, they will see only the blameless and the beautiful, the gentle and the kind. They will be as careful to let no little act of charity, no tiny expression of forgiveness, no little breath of love escape their notice. And they will return with all the happy things they found to share them lovingly with me. Be not afraid of them. They offer you salvation. Theirs are the messages of safety, for they see the world as kind.
We found to share them lovingly with me. I'm not afraid of them. They offer me freedom. There's a message of safety, for they perceive the world as kind. Their messages are of safety. For they perceive the world as kind. Okay, so you want to read it from the top? Just make sure we're good with the translation.
The remembrance of perfect love has given me love's perceptions to perceive for me instead of those I trained through fear. They are as eager to return to me what they value as are my misperceptions. If I call upon them, they will perceive only the blameless, the beautiful, the gentle, and the kind. They will be as careful to let no little act of kindness, no tiny expression of letting go, and no little breath of love escape their notice. And they will return with all the happy things they found to share them lovingly with me. I am not afraid of them. They offer me freedom. Their messages are only of safety, or they perceive the world as kind.
Yeah. So thoughts on that? You want to summarize that? What's he saying?
Well, the remembrance of perfect love has given us love's perceptions instead of those that are trained through fear, the opposite. And it's eager for us to return back to the innocent, blameless, gentle, kind self, true self. And even, they're careful to notice even just the smallest of acts, if it's kindness or letting go or any little expression of love, they'll notice it and help. And they will return, and all the happy things will be returned lovingly to us. So there's no need to be afraid, it only offers us freedom. And the messages are only safety and kindness to the world.
Yeah, so it's the antidote to all of that insane, ugly, misperceptions of the ego. And you can live in this loving world, and it can be a happy dream because of it. Why wouldn't we want that? Okay, number 15. John, if you can read that.
Yeah. If you send forth only the messengers the remembrance of perfect love gives you, wanting no messages but theirs, you will see fear no more.
I will remember we put it in the first person.
Oh, yeah. If I send forth only the messengers, remembrance of perfect love gives me, wanting no messages but theirs, I will perceive fear no more.
I will, no longer perceive.
Yeah. Do we need an I at the beginning as well, John? If I send forth only the messengers.
We do, yeah.
I send forth only the messengers the remembrance of perfect love gives me, wanting no messages but theirs, I will no longer perceive fear.
Call upon, maybe. I call on only the perceptions the remembrance of perfect love gives me. See, now that makes it, I know he's got there's a whole analogy going on, isn't it? Messengers sending forth. It's quite poetic, but actually he's just talking about perceptions.
Yes.
Call on only. I call only on the perceptions remembrance of perfect love gives me.
Wanting no message.
Wanting no messages but theirs, because the perceptions give me messages. Then I will no longer perceive fear. Perceive fear, perceive fearfully.
Whichever, yeah.
Perceive fear or perceive fearfully?
Well, perhaps fearfully, yeah, perceive fearfully.
Hmm.
The world will be transformed before my sight, cleansed of all guilt and softly brushed with beauty. The world contains no fear that I did not lay upon it. I did not
Impose upon it, maybe?
impose upon it. Yeah,
Project. Project.
project. Yes. World
Project upon it.
I did not
Not.
project upon it.
Yeah.
And none I cannot ask love's messengers to remove from it, and none that I cannot ask love's messengers to remove from it, and see them still. The world contains no fear that I did not project onto it, and none I cannot ask love's
Perceptions.
perceptions to remove.
From it, yeah, and
From it.
and see it still. What does he mean by and see it still? And I cannot ask love's perceptions to remove from it,
And still see.
and then still see the world.
Yeah. Well, the good in the world.
And love's perceptions to remove from it. Oh, that adds any value. Should we just take that out?
Yeah, so yeah.
Hmm.
None I cannot ask love's perception to move from. Yeah, much simpler. The remembrance of perfect love has given me his perceptions to give to my brother and return to me with what love perceives. Remembrance of perfect love has given me its perceptions to send to my brother.
Of my, I think, perceptions of my.
Okay, yes. The remembrance of perfect love has given me its perceptions of my companions
To return to me.
to return to me
With what love perceives.
what love perceives. The remembrance of perfect love has given me its perceptions of my companions to return to me with what love perceives. They have been given to replace the hungry dogs of fear I sent instead. And they go forth to signify the end of fear. And they go out to signify the end of fear.
Signify.
To
Confirm, maybe?
yeah. Yes, to confirm.
So, yeah, my perceptions then confirm, my state of mind.
Yeah.
Confirms the fear in my mind, and I perceive the world differently. As within, so without. So it's an internal change, primarily. I mean, he's just telling us what's in this diagram. If we go to this diagram, so it's illustrated quite well here. I changed my mind. Love is now at my core instead of fear. So I desire to be one self rather than a separate self. And then my belief that I'm the true self, that I'm really one with my brothers, and thoughts that come from that, and emotions underlie all of my perceptions. And those perceptions now get sent forth, called upon, and they perceive accordingly. They will interpret all the sensory data that the world gives them according to the thought system that has directed them. See? So perception is an inside job, not an outside, because it doesn't matter what the sensory perceptions are, we can always interpret them according to either thought system. If someone wants to see with the eyes of fear, then they will. And someone can see exactly the same thing, and they will see it through the eyes of love, and they'll perceive it differently. I mentioned that this afternoon. Did I mention about that movie I saw with my friend, Indecent Proposal? And that was a classic example. It's like, okay, same sensory input. We're both sitting in a movie watching the scene on the screen, and he perceives it in one way based on a separate self, based on a thought system that was rooted in condemnation and fear and attack, and I perceive it another way based on a thought system of love, that the guy was actually quite a loving, kind guy, not an attacking, horrible, condemning one. But exactly the same situation, exactly the same behavior. We both observed it, and we have different interpretations of it. And that's exactly what he's saying here. You will perceive it according to the thought system that is instructing the perceptions, and you will perceive it accordingly. And they will never agree. I didn't agree, my friend. I said, no, I disagree. I think it's, he said, no, the guy was, because that's what he wanted to see. So he sends forth his perceptions, and that's what his mind, his thought system, which was quite fearful and condemnatory, that's what it wants to perceive, and so that's what he perceives.
Yeah.
Then the alternative seems to be ridiculous and false. He goes, no, you're wrong. And I go, no, you're wrong. And they never agree, do they? They never do agree. And that was, probably the beginning of the end of our relationship, actually. It started to make me question, like, so where is this guy coming from? If he sees that and he can't see my point of view in something as simple as that, okay, we didn't have a major argument about it, but down the line, when we lived together, we had massive arguments because he just couldn't see my point of view, and I couldn't accept his. I'm like, it's just not, it's not reasonable, because fear and love will never agree. All right, so you want to summarize that in your own words, and then we'll go on to number 16.
Yes, well, it's saying that if I send out the messengers of love, I will be rewarded with only love, and fear will be ended.
Remember that the messengers are perceptions.
Yeah.
That's what
So when I choose to perceive with love, I will be rewarded with the end of fear.
And all these misperceptions, cleansed of guilt, are done. And I can see the world, I can see the beauty in the world because I'm perceiving it from its essence. The essence is life. And that life essence shines through in everything. The scientific materialist paradigm has denied that life essence. They said, no, it's just, the universe is unconscious. It's just this accidental, there's no real purpose to it. It's this accidental product of various chemical processes. Consciousness is an accident of that. And that everything is actually unconscious. The life essence that is in everything is denied by that thought system. You cannot perceive the spirit or the life essence because it's denied, and everything just is if everything is just a a product of these sort of random biochemical processes, and it has no real life and no sentience, then you can treat it however you want, can't you? Oh well, it's all just so we can do whatever to sentient beings, to other people, to animals, to plants, and this is why we have the world that we do, where people just they disconnected from that life essence, so they think it's okay to mistreat things that have that same life essence. You see how that thought system leads directly into the kind of really cruel, uncaring misperceptions and behavior that characterize our world. Because if you deny the very essence of life, that is also your essence, then it's just some random unconscious product of atoms and molecules, and it just becomes a resource. Oh well, how can this be useful to me? You don't honor the life essence in the person or in the whatever the animal plant is.
Yeah, that's good, John.
Yeah. So number 16, Elaine, if you can read that, an alternative.
Love, too, would set a feast before me, on a table covered with a spotless cloth, set in a quiet garden where no sound but singing and softly joyous whispering is ever heard. This is a feast that honors my Holy Spirit, relationship, and at which everyone is welcomed as an honored guest. And in a holy instant, grace is said by everyone together as they join in gentleness before the table of communion. And I will join me there. As I go, I promised and promise still. Promise. For in my new relationship am I made welcome, and where I am made welcome, there I am.
Grace is said, and that's so funny how our life works, because I was listening to a long talk by Rupert Sheldrake. It just came on after his video on YouTube. Does that last night, and he was talking about these rituals of grace. One of the rituals he said was grace. So we would say grace, and this has gone out of fashion now, but you'd say grace before a meal. It was Thanksgiving, right? I'm giving thanks for the meal. We do it together. We might hold hands, and it's connection, and it brings some kind of presence into the meal, doesn't it? And now people say, oh, well, do start because it's going to get cold. It doesn't quite have the same impact on awareness, does it? When we say grace. So I think as part of the retreat, that's what we'll do. There'll be a little prayer, and it's really a prayer of thanksgiving, to say thank you for the company, thank you for the meal. Gratitude is a very powerful force in our minds to bring happiness and peace.
Yeah.
So now he's used the grace, and so that's often what happens. Something comes in one aspect of your life, and it comes into your perception, and then it's reinforced in the course, and you see it very, very soon afterwards. It's amazing how that works. Have you found that?
Yeah. More often, yeah.
It's said by everyone together as they join in gentleness before the table of communion. Lovely imagery, right? So we're all happy. We're having a meal. Think of a beautiful summer's day, and you're sitting out.
Sounds lovely.
In the garden, and it's just quiet, and there's some singing in the background, and and you know, all of your friends and family are there. You know, that's happy times, isn't it?
It certainly is.
They join in gentleness before the table of communion. And so he's using these analogies, this imagery, so that we can relate to it. So we can go, yeah, okay, we've all had meals with people, maybe we've said grace. Some people still do, and there's a communion, there's a connection, and it's a happy time. And those are really our happiest times in this world, aren't they?
Yeah.
Those times when we feel connected, we feel part of everyone, we connected, there's love, there's no, you know, particular stress, there's no working to do. You know, think of a nice Sunday lunch, and it's holidays, and it's just like, it's a happy time. And he's saying that love, you know, this is what love does for us. And it can always be that way. It's not just, you know, odd occasions on a Sunday afternoon. It can always be that way if you allow it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I will join you there. So this is Yeshua saying he will join us for our meal. Yeshua will join me there. As long ago I promised and promise still. Yeah. So again, Rinpoche was talking about the ritual of the you know, the meal, the Last Supper, and became a you know, ritual in the Christian tradition. And he said, I will join you there. As long ago I promised and I promise still. He said, I will not forsake you. I will return. He promised. Yeah. He said to his disciples, I will come again.
Mm-hmm.
So his promise has been met. It's just not in the physical. He's come again through this course. This is his word, his teaching into the world, to so that we, you know, we can learn from it, and we're not abandoned by him in the dream, which is quite something, really. You know, so he's free, but he's saying, I haven't forgotten you. You know, my mission is to bring every one of you back home. And that is, you know, he's the leader of the at-one-ment. That's his mission. As long as the illusion lasts, that's how long he will still have a function as the leader of the at-one-ment, to bring this message to humanity. And now he does it through us. You know, so he needs our bodies, our minds, our hands, our eyes, our ears, our feet, and most of all our willingness, he says, in order to take the message out and help those minds who are hungering for it to find it and understand it. And that's, you know, that is why we're here. That's why the art of letting go exists. That's why community's here. That's why the program's there. It's all being guided by him. Okay, so if we're in my new relationship.
Or in my new relationship, am I made welcome? And where I am made welcome, there I am.
Yeah, so he's talking about himself as Yeshua. So if we're in your new relationship. So if we're in my new relationship, first person, I make welcome. I welcome Yeshua. So Yeshua as the Christ, for in my new relationship, I welcome Yeshua. And where he is made welcome, or like we say, their love is. Because he's the symbol of love in this world, right? He's a symbol of unconditional love, of a man who attained this unconditionally loving awareness consistently in his life. So he's a symbol of unconditional love in this world. So when we make him welcome there, unconditional love is. And so our relationship is dedicated then to unconditional love, rather than fear and sin and guilt and attack and so on. Okay, so what's he saying there in essence? I don't have to. The
Love,
imagery is, one thing, but what's the essence of what he's saying in a nutshell?
unconditional love is all there really is, to offer us everything.
Yeah.
For our
In
relationships.
I think in my transformed relationship, I would say. So he means by new is transformed.
Mm.
Transformed relationship. I welcome Yeshua. And where he is made welcome, there unconditional love is. So we bring him as the unconditional loving presence, awareness, someone who actually attained it in his life in human form into our relationships. And that's what it means to give everything to Christ. We say you give it to Christ, you give it to Jesus. What does it mean? It means you surrender your own ideas and you allow this loving presence, this loving, unconditionally loving awareness that he represented to come in and transform it. Okay, so happy with number 16.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
17, well, it's a long one. Okay, so I think this is the last one. Yeah, it's the last one. So John, if you can read that.
Yeah. I am made welcome in the state of grace.
So this is Yeshua, yeah?
Yeshua.
Yeah, Yeshua's made.
Welcome in the state of grace, which means I have at last. Yeshua is made welcome in the state of grace, which means I am at last forgiven.
Is welcomed in the state of grace, which means I've at last
Forgiven which means I have at last forgiven myself.
No, which means you have he said you have last forgiven me. So he's talking about himself.
Yes.
It means I have at last forgiven him.
Yes, of course.
He became the symbol of my sin.
For he became the symbol of my sin.
And so he had to die instead of me. Right? So this is the ego's misinterpretation of his crucifixion. Ego said, well, sin is real, so someone had to suffer and pay the price for sin, and he was it. He had to die instead of me. He died for my sins. That's the interpretation, the misinterpretation of the crucifixion that is common in Christian terms, in Christianity. Traditional Christians believe that.
So is that he with a capital H at the beginning of the sentence?
No, because we're talking about Yeshua.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Yeah. So Yeshua became the symbol.
Well, he became the symbol
sin.
of my sin, and so he had to die instead of me.
Yeah. And so isn't that interesting how the ego works? He's actually the symbol of freedom from sin. The resurrection showed us that sin and guilt and death are not real. And so actually his true symbolic value is that he's a symbol of resurrection, of freedom from that. But the Christian traditional Christianity focuses on the sin and the guilt. They focus more on the crucifixion than the resurrection. Exactly what he's saying, that the messengers of fear will go out and they will see whatever the ego wants them to see. So they will interpret that whole crucifixion resurrection drama accordingly, and they will focus on the sin and the guilt and the fear rather than on the resurrection and the freedom and the escape to eternal life, which is what it's really about.
Mhm.
So that's what he's highlighting here.
Yeah.
It means I've at last forgiven him, so I've at last. So forgiven him here would be I've at last let go of my misperceptions
Okay.
of him. Yeah. That's what it
Yes.
really means.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyone who's a traditional Christian reading this, it would be challenged because he's saying, well, actually, you've misperceived me. And this is all based on, your addiction to sin and guilt. But now you can let that go. Realize that I came not as a symbol of sin, but I came as a symbol of freedom and eternal life. And you just misperceived that. And that can be quite a revelation for people. When they get this, they go, "Oh my goodness, I get it. I've actually been in a misperception my entire life, and what I've believed about Yeshua, and my whole faith has been actually twisted and distorted and warped because of these false beliefs."
Yeah.
But those who are addicted to sin and guilt will not believe this. That's why those very fundamentalist Christians will say, no, this is the devil's work, and this is the denial of the truth, because they have to believe in the ego's misinterpretations in order to continue in their ego identities. Okay, so therefore he became a symbol of sin, and so he had to die instead of me.
Yes.
That's what the traditional Christian interpretation is, that he's died, some kind of sacrificial lamb for our sins. He died for the sins of humanity, which makes sin, of course, real.
To the belief in separation, sin means death. And so atonement is achieved through murder. Belief in separation, sin means death. And so atonement is achieved through murder.
Isn't that's exactly what the traditional interpretation of the crucifixion says? Atonement is somehow achieved through murder. He had to be killed in order to atone for the sins of humanity. I mean, it's bizarre, really. It's a crazy thought system, but that's what's come to be called, traditional Christianity.
Yeah.
And people believe that, and they don't believe the truth that actually he came to teach us that sin isn't real. Sin and guilt and death are simply not real, and they can be transcended. But you see then how the ego twists it and distorts it, and it will see what it wants to see in that crucifixion resurrection drama, based on its desire to be a separate self, to maintain guilt and sin. So isn't that interesting that he's actually come to free us from that? His whole life was dedicated to being a teaching and a symbol of freedom from guilt and sin, and yet the ego has gone and turned it around and interpreted it in a way that actually perpetuates guilt and sin and death.
Yeah. To my belief in separation, sin means death. And so atonement is achieved through murder.
Say it, what he means is atonement.
Atonement.
Atonement. And remember, it's a small a.
Oh, yeah.
Atonement in that sense,
And so
atonement in that sense, in the traditional sense,
yes.
means an expiation of guilt. Just look it up, atonement. Definition. The action of making amends for wrong or injury and in Christian theology, the reconciliation of God and humankind through Jesus Christ. Yeah, so that's a theological interpretation.
Yeah.
It's a reparation or expiation for sin. And specifically in Christian theology, the reconciliation of God and man through Jesus Christ, because he had to die for our sins, right? So this is what he's referring to. Atonement is achieved through murder.
Yeah.
Well, that might have been the Christian theology, but it's a bizarre interpretation, saying no, this is not true at all.
Yeah. Salvation is looked upon as a way by which the extension of pure formless awareness was killed instead of me.
Yeah, so I may, so let's have a look what I may perceive.
I may perceive freedom. I may perceive that freedom
May
is
perceive, we don't need that there. Perceive freedom as a way by which the Son of God, extension,
perceive freedom as a way by which the extension of God was killed instead of me.
which would be quite a common misperception, I think, among traditional Christians.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of fear in that. Well, if God did that to his own son, oh God, what might happen to me? Okay, but the teaching says, well, he died so I don't have to, but the reality of death is still very much in my mind. Sin and guilt seem to be real. And so it's hardly a message of liberation and freedom from all of that. It actually entrenches it.
Mm.
Death, murder, sin, guilt, attack.
I may perceive freedom as a way by which the extension of perfect love was killed instead of me. Yet would I offer my
And have you ever asked yourself, just as an interesting thought, John, why did they choose the image of Jesus on the cross as their symbol? Why did they choose that and not the image of a stone blown away from why didn't they focus on the resurrection? Why did they focus on crucifixion so much?
Yeah.
Because actually that wasn't the final outcome. He appeared again to his disciples and he was, splendid he was radiant, he was transformed. So why didn't they have an image of a transformed Jesus instead of the one dying on the cross?
Indeed, yes.
Because the ego demands that sin and guilt are real, and so that was what they focused on and made real to millions and millions of people, rather than the resurrected Jesus. The final outcome of his life was he was, for 30 days, he wandered around, appearing and disappearing as a completely enlightened being. And that crucifixion was a very short, it was like one day of his whole life. So why focus on that? Why make that the symbol of your whole religion, the cross, when actually there's other things they could have symbolized? Well, exactly what he's saying here. So this is like the demonstration. I think he's demonstrating what he's taught here in terms of like the focus of the ego being fear and how it sends its perceptions out and it perceives accordingly. And he's saying, well, look, in this instance with the crucifixion, look at how that's happened. And now he's correcting that and saying, well, actually, these ideas are not correct. But someone who's very attached to the dogma will not accept this. Well, they'll reject the course because it challenges that whole teaching, what they believe. And they perceive freedom as a way by which the extension of perfect love was killed instead of me. perceive maybe awakening, or may perceive awakening as a way by which the extension of perfect love was killed instead of me. Kind of bizarre when you put awakening there, doesn't it? Because it's like, well, how could that be? But it is bizarre. That's why it's inconsistent with true awakening. Okay, so
yet I would offer you my body, yet would he offer me his body. His body, whom I love, knowing
you whom I love, yet would he offer me his body, me whom, I whom, would he offer me his body, I whom he loves.
oh, blimey. Yet would he offer me I whom he loves, knowing its littleness. Okay.
Would he offer me, let's just make it simpler. Would he offer me whom he loves his body?
Yet
Would he, how about, this is even better. Would he, knowing its littleness, offer me whom he loves his body? No, actually, it works better the other way. Keep it there. Knowing its littleness after whom he loves his body, knowing its littleness. So he's saying, well, would I really do that? Would I offer you my body when the body is nothing?
Yeah.
I say that this is your salvation, that this will, the sacrifice of my body will atone for your sins. I mean, when I know that none of this is true.
Yeah.
Well, no, of course he wouldn't do that.
Or would I teach?
He teach.
Or would he teach that bodies cannot keep us apart? Mine was of no greater value than yours. His was of no greater value than mine. No better means for communication of awareness, awakening, but not its source. His was of no greater value than mine. No better means for communication of awakening, but not its source. And no better means. No.
Original, and no better means for communication of salvation, but not its source. Okay, so
yeah,
it can communicate awakening, but not its source. No better means for communication of awakening.
No one can die for anyone, and death does not atone for sin. But you can live to show it is not real, but I can live to show it is not real. The body does appear to be the symbol of separation.
Symbol of sin.
A symbol of sin. While I believe that it can get me what I want. While I believe that it can give me pleasure, I will also believe that it can bring me pain. To think I could be satisfied and happy with so little is to hurt myself, and to limit the happiness that I would have calls upon pain to fill my meager store and make my life complete. I think I could be satisfied and happy with so little as to hurt myself and to limit the happiness that I would have.
That I could have, shall we make it?
Could have.
Not the happiness that I could have calls upon pain to fill
My meager store and make my life complete.
meager. It's not, meager, that's the correct British spelling, isn't it?
Meager.
R-E-E-R.
Yeah.
Is it? Let's just check.
Store and make my life.
Meager definition, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, my meager store and make my life complete.
This is completion as the belief in separation perceives it. But guilt creeps in where happiness has been removed.
Say my separate self, showing my separate self perceives it.
So perceives it. The guilt creeps in where happiness has been removed and substitutes for it. Communion is another kind of completion, which goes beyond guilt because it goes beyond the body. Communion is another kind of completion. It goes beyond guilt because it goes beyond the body.
Yeah. So the ego offers us, a sense of completion, calls upon pain to fill my meager store and make my life complete. I mean, how can that ever satisfy you? Pain can't complete you, surely, but this is what the ego is telling us. This is completion as my separate self perceives it. So when I'm a complete victim, I'm totally in pain and miserable and suffering, then I'm complete. How can that be? This is how the separate self will perceive it. Guilt creeps in where happiness has been removed and substitutes for it. Fills the void. So when we deny love, then what remains must be guilt and fear and sin. Substitute for love and peace and joy. Communion is another kind of completion which goes beyond guilt because it goes beyond the body. So it's referring him. It's a great passage that really, he's just deconstructed traditional Christianity here, hasn't he?
Yeah.
It's gone, actually, this is not the case. And here's why, very intelligently, clearly, and said, this is, how can this be? That I would offer you my body as atonement. When I realized the body is nothing, how could I offer you my body to atone for your sins, which aren't even real?
Yeah.
It's a bizarre belief.
Yeah.
You think I was crucified and I had to be sacrificed by God for sins that are real, like some kind of sacrificial lamb or animal. But you understand why they perceived it that way, because that was the model. That's the way the Judaic religion, that's the way they thought. And they were familiar with the idea of sacrifice, so they would have the ritual sacrifice of the goat or the lamb. There had to be blood to atone for sins. That was the belief.
Yeah.
So you can understand why they took that belief and they just imposed that on the crucifixion and said, okay, well, that's how we're going to perceive it. And obviously the disciples felt guilty as well because they felt they could have done more to save Yeshua. And so their guilt came into it. And the whole thing then got misinterpreted from the start by the original disciples. And then, once that original misinterpretation had been made, it just got got carried on through the whole tradition and amplified. And so traditional Christians don't recognize that that you need to look into the history of it and see how it evolved, and that maybe, as he said, his disciples didn't understand what he understood. So you don't they didn't really get it. So of course they misinterpreted his death because they had their own personal guilt to deal with as well. And then you get this crazy teaching that he had to die for our sins and atone to take on the sins of humanity and be some kind of sacrificial lamb, when that was not the case at all. He was just demonstrating, this is the ego's thought system: death, sin, guilt, fear, attack, and death. That was the crucifixion. And then the resurrection symbolized the freedom from it. Okay, well, you don't have to, this cannot really kill you. You can't really die. And he demonstrated that to show that actually the love is more powerful than fear, and that our true selves can overcome the world of the ego made by our separate selves. That's the correct interpretation of the crucifixion resurrection drama. He actually was there to show us that there is no sin, and all of that is a delusion, and it can be overcome with enough awareness. You can overcome it, transcend it completely. Okay, so what else is he saying in this paragraph? I'm going to summarize that in your own words.
Well, he's stressing the importance of not valuing the body and not to think that we can achieve anything through punishing ourselves in any way. Because we are, and because we are not separate, there is no point going down this route of self-punishment, self-flagellation.
And we must correct our misperceptions of this whole crucifixion drama and what Yeshua's life was about. Because if we believe that it was he was atoning for our sin and he had to have some kind of sacrifice for our sins, we maintain our belief in sin and guilt, and that's not helping us.
Yeah.
So let go. When he says, forgive me now, he means let go of your misperceptions of me and what my life was really about, because they're not correct. And actually, if you perceive it correctly, it's the most inspiring story ever, because what he showed us was that we're not limited by death, that we can overcome it. That there is an eternal, life essence that transcends death. All right, so let me just have a look at a quick summary. Do we need another summary? I'm not sure we do. Elaine gone. summarize the text below in under 300 words. Oh, that's interesting. Really did a very short there. No, it will do well. Start a new chat. All right, so paste this in. Not that one, sorry, other one. Ryan's gone to bed. Yeah, so let me just do the summary quickly. It's not actually too long.
Yeah.
I learned the interplay. That's really I learned the
Yeah.
the difference. It's the difference, really. It's not interplay, it's the difference. I learned the difference between love and fear.
I learn the difference between love and fear and how they shape my perceptions and relationships in the world. Love, as I understand it, can only see the truth and is drawn only to itself, overlooking guilt completely. On the other hand, fear denies love and is attracted to guilt, perceiving things that love cannot. In this passage, I learn the difference between love and fear. Well, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Fear denies love and is attracted to guilt, perceiving things that love cannot. Yeah. So,
Yeah. I have noticed that fear's perception is deeply influenced by terror. Interesting. Yeah. Leading it. I have noticed that fear's perception is deeply influenced by.
No, we don't have to say I've noticed. Say fear's perceptions.
Fear's perceptions are deeply influenced by. Fear's perceptions are deeply influenced by.
Underlay or underpinned, underline.
His perceptions are under.
Terror. How about terror?
Reinforced? No. No, I don't know.
How about terror? Terror underlies fears misperceptions.
Yes, that's good. That's good. That's good. Terror underlies fears misperceptions, leading it to seek out and feed upon guilt and evil. As a result, its view of the world becomes distorted and fearful. However, I have also come to realize that the remembrance of perfect love offers a different way of perceiving. It focuses on kindness, beauty, and love, bringing about a transformative shift in how I see the world. However, the remembrance of love offers a different way of perceiving. It focuses on kindness, beauty, and love, bringing about a transformative shift in how I see the world. While I embrace the perceptions of perfect love,
I'm transforming
yeah,
how I perceive the world. My only criticism would be it's too verbose in its summary. So what it said there could be just said easier, transforming how I perceive the world.
yeah,
But
yeah.
so if it's a summary, you want to get straight to the point. Anyway, but it doesn't do a bad job because it gives us something to then just work on and edit. So
When I embrace the perceptions of perfect love, I find myself experiencing a world cleansed of fear of guilt. Yep. It becomes a place where kindness and gentleness prevail, and I feel connected to others in a way that goes beyond physical appearance. When I accept perception of love, I find myself experiencing a world cleansed. It becomes a place where kindness and gentleness prevail, and I feel connected to others in a way that goes beyond physical appearance.
the world cleansed, the world cleansed, freed.
No, freed, yeah. Freed of fear and guilt.
Comes a place where kindness and gentleness prevail. Feel connected to others in a way that goes beyond physical appearances. Huh?
Yeah.
Death does not absolve sin.
Death does not absolve sin, but living to demonstrate. Death does not absolve sin, but living to demonstrate that sin is not real can lead to a different understanding. Death does not absolve sin, but living demonstrates that sin is not real.
Death cannot, maybe atone. Death cannot atone for sin. So, what do we say? This shows death cannot atone for sin. Cannot atone for anyone's sins. Living in a way living and he calls on me to demonstrate that sin is not real in my life. that's correct. That's one of the section. Okay, calls on me to demonstrate that sin is not real in my life, through my life, maybe.
Yeshua's death cannot atone for anyone's sins, and he calls on me to demonstrate that sin is not real through my life. I will then realize the body is just a symbol, and communion with others goes beyond it. I will then realize that the body is just a symbol, communion with others goes beyond it.
Through communion with others.
I then realize that the body is just a symbol, and through communion with others transcend.
Will
Oh,
transcend.
yeah, okay. Yeah.
Will transcend it
Yeah.
in my perception.
Hmm.
Okay, so choosing love's perceptions over fears.
Choosing love's perceptions over fears can profoundly impact my outlook on life. By focusing on love, I can transform my perception of the world, letting go of fear and embracing a reality filled with beauty, kindness, and love. Yeah.
Focusing on love. Transform my perception of the world. Or fear. Embrace reality filled with beauty, kindness, and love. Okay. Happy with that? I'm happy with all that.
Very good, Joe. Very good.
Oh, okay. So let's just do the there's a key message. So it does it in 50 words. Key message is to choose love over fear. Love perceives truth and overlooks guilt, leading to a transformed perception of the world, free from fear and filled with beauty, kindness, and unity. It's all right. So a short takeaway.
Yeah.
People can read that and just get a, because there will be people who go, oh, no, I want to read the whole thing.
No.
Just want to go to the summary and get the summary. And I want onto that.
The key message is to choose love over fear, as love perceives truth and overlooks guilt, leading to a transformed perception of the world, free from fear and filled with beauty, kindness, and yeah, it's very good, isn't it?
Pretty good for 50 words. I think it's even less than 50 words.
Yeah.
Overlook guilt, leading to a transformed perception of the world, free from fear and filled with beauty, kindness, and unconditional love.
Yeah.
So that's the key message. Okay, so do you want to do a meditation on this, John, or is it too late? for you?
No, it's too late for me, John.
No,
Yeah.
you better- Okay, so maybe just do you want to just read it from the top? Make sure we got
Yeah.
that all
Yeah.
okay. Everything's good. So read the personalized summary and the key message again from the top. Just make these unnecessary things. And then
In this passage, I learn the difference between love and fear and how they shape my perceptions and relationships in the world. Love can only see the truth and is drawn only to itself, overlooking guilt completely. On the other hand, fear denies love and is attracted to guilt, perceiving things that love cannot. Terror underlies fear's misperceptions, leading it to seek out and feed upon guilt and evil. As a result, its view of the world becomes distorted and fearful. However, the remembrance of perfect love offers me a different way of perceiving the world. It focuses on kindness, beauty, and love, transforming how I perceive the world. When I accept the perceptions of perfect love, I find myself experiencing a world freed from guilt and fear. It becomes a place where kindness and gentleness prevail, and I feel connected to others in a way that goes beyond physical appearance.
change that to remembrance of.
Yeshua's death cannot atone for anyone's sins, and he calls on me to demonstrate that sin is not real through my life. I will then realize that the body is just a symbol, and true communion with others will transcend it in my perception. Choosing love's perceptions over fear's misperceptions will profoundly affect my perception of everyone and everything. By focusing on love, I will transform my perception of the world. Let go of fear and embrace a reality filled with beauty, kindness, and love.
And then the key message.
Key message is, I choose love over fear as love perceives truth and overlooks guilt, leading to a transformed perception of the world, free from fear and filled with beauty, kindness, and unconditional love. Nice.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're kind of getting. I mean, if this is going to be a system for people to study the course, is it going to be helpful? You've got, the original, you've got the alternatives, you've got summaries, and then a key takeaway. Okay, well, actually, this in essence is what the whole section's saying, boiled down to one simple sentence or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on that note, wish you much beauty, kindness, and unconditional love. And
Yes.
have a good week. in that flow, and maybe see you Sunday. So we're going to do a Sunday evening session, probably starting at 6 or 7 p.m. Okay, will you be able to join us?
I don't know. I'll have to see, John. I don't know what's happening on Sunday just yet. Yeah, I might well be there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if I see you, I see you. And have a happy weekend.
Yeah, you too, John. Okay, bye for now.
Thanks, John. Bye. Sleep well. Okay, so that's a wrap for tonight. Good session. Some great messages. The messages: listen to love and let go of fear. And that, the traditional interpretation of atonement through sacrifice of the Issua's body is nonsense. We need to let go of that and understand that only the truth is true, that there is no sin and guilt, and that actually what he symbolized was the freedom from the whole thought system of sin and guilt, and the body and death, and a resurrection into eternal life. So I wish you much love, peace, joy, and kindness and beauty. Hope you have a very loving, flowing, kind, beautiful weekend. Hope to see you on Sunday. So if you remember, join us. And Masterclass will be running on Sunday. So join us Sunday by registering. Below, I'll put a link below this YouTube video. You can go and register and join us in the Zoom room and find out more about how this Art of Letting Go program community can help you learn these powerful lessons of life. So go ahead, click the link, go to thealg.com and join us for our next masterclass. So hope to see you on the inside, and namaste. Which means the unconditional love in me acknowledges and honors that same loving awareness in you.